Hello and welcome to another episode of the HR Office, a podcast with Tigizwa Vezile. I promised you a lot of guests that are going to be sharing some expertise with us today. I've got a very, very special person, and I am so excited that I am presenting to you today Mr. Jonathan Goldberg, who is a trusted resource in our country when it comes to legal matters, especially employment matters in the country. He has a very, very, very long profile, and I will take forever if I were to read every piece of information that he has shared with me today. But it's important for you to know that we are talking to somebody who is qualified, a qualified lawyer, somebody that has got legal expertise and experience, a BCom, LLB, and Masters in Business Administration, also a format which is an instructional design training, the owner of one of the biggest training institutions in the country, Global Business Solutions. I'm sure many of you will see a familiar face. He has various memberships within different organizations in the country. He has different publications, and some of us may have seen him publishing some information that has got to do with case law on LinkedIn. On a weekly basis, you'll see something from him. And he has also spent some time in the classroom lecturing from different universities, your Stellenbosch, your Rhodes Investec Business School. And at the moment, he is busy with negotiations, the MESITA, the automotive manufacturers, tire and rubber and textile sectors. So we are not just bringing you somebody who does not know what he's going to be talking about today. We're talking about someone who has representations within the NEDLAC, and there are various dispute resolution bodies that he also forms part of. And he has various accolades. Like I said to you earlier, it's somebody who has got a profile that is very long. I will take forever if I were to read every detail. But I need to mention the accolades. In 2018, he received a Future of HR Works, which was a CEO of the Year award. And in 2016, he had received the Chartered Director from the Institute of Directors in South Africa. And then in 2012, he received an EdCorp Chairman Award. And again in 2012, he was a co-winner of the Business Person, which is an entrepreneurship award from ABSA Jewish Awards, and then a Federation of African Professional Staffing Organization, in short, ABSA. And then lastly, he is also part of the Border Kai Chamber Commerce and Daily Dispatch Award as well. And then in 2009, he was the Business of the Year category C, a turnover which is above 10 million. I just want to emphasize once again, we did not bring you just anybody. Welcome to our special guest, Jonathan Goldberg. Thank you so much for affording us your time.
Thank you for the honor and the privilege, and I look forward to spending the time with you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goldberg. The way I'm excited, I can't even contain my excitement. Before we start, I just wanted to let you know that I did some brief interviews informally with people, wanting to know from them what exactly would they want to know from you. And the questions that I'll be sharing and reading are not questions that are coming from me. A lot of people have contributed. I need to make sure that I recognize that. Today, the most important thing, which is what we are specializing on, negotiations, dispute resolution. We are busy in this podcast with looking at people's experiences, especially when it comes to dispute in the workplace. People have had issues at work. Some of them did not know how to resolve them. They did not do anything, and some of them decided to leave the workplace. We just need your perspective today on dispute resolution, emphasizing on proactive measures and strategies that employers and employees can employ to prevent conflicts and manage their relationships effectively. today you find there are issues when it comes to employer-employee relationships. You may see people are striking because they can manage issues that they can sit on the table and discuss. One of the questions that I have here, Mr. Goldberg, is people want you to share with us the background of your experience in dealing with employment-related disputes, particularly within the legal framework of Labour Court and CCMA. Can you just briefly share with us your experience?
Yeah, sure, that's a very complex subject, but to get it to a short answer, between employers and employees, the best form of dispute resolution is communication. So a lot of employees don't communicate effectively, and of course then that causes the dispute, and that dispute is not resolved, then it builds up and builds up and builds up. It's like an issue you might have with your partner, with your child, with any relationship you do have. You don't deal with that, it builds up until one of the parties explode, and generally that explosion isn't good for anyone because it's an overreaction to something that it could have been quite easily solved via communication. So communication is key. Employers do it particularly badly, employees do it particularly badly, trade unions, representatives also do it particularly badly. So everyone in the collective workplace don't communicate properly, and that's a real big problem in the workplace. I think once you get to the CCMA or Labour Court, you're looking at a third-party intervention, which of course is necessary at times. But if you had proper communication, proper dispute resolution processes internally, then you would never get to the CCMA. You'd never get to the Labour Court because you resolve issues before you get there. Now, often resolution of disputes means that you've got a problem. I must say yes to resolve the dispute. That's not necessarily true. It could also be a quick no to say, listen here, that's not the rule, that's not the regulation, this is how to apply, and it's a no. But maybe it causes an expectation. And a lot of managers are not strong enough to say no when they know it's no. So again, saying no, it's no when it is no is a good management tool. So we're finding at the workplace is managers quite don't understand it. Manageresses the difference between being a manager and being friendly with the people that you manage. I don't have to be friendly with the people I manage. I've just got to be civil, decent, and most importantly is consistent. Now if you look at the international research around consistency, some people talk about fairness, and fairness is an element potentially of consistency, or the vice versa. But the point is, people want to be treated fairly. And you see on research and case studies down around the world that people rather not have a little bit, even if it's a little bit, and they feel they're being treated unfairly. They'd rather not have at all. So consistency, making sure that employees believe and understand and see that you're treating people equally. So in other words, an employee at a low level comes late, he's treated the same way as a manager or manageress who comes late. That people are treated with the same respect, regardless of your sex, color, creed, religion, that everyone is greeted. And again, if you start doing that in the workplace, you see an automatic change. So to my mind, if you're going to measure organizations, maybe measure them off the disputes they have a year. And to say, well, how do we ensure that we intervene and cause a reduction of those disputes? Because again, a reduction of the disputes, to my mind, mean proper employee-employer relationships. And sometimes no does mean no. There are cases where you might say, well, you don't believe me that this is not call it a discriminatory practice as an example. It might need a third-party adjudication where people are completely opposed. But I think with proper explanation, proper mediation, proper confidentiality, I think 99% of workplace disputes are resolved. And it's interesting if you do the research, which I've done, it's not necessarily the firms that pay the most that have the least number of disputes. Sometimes it's the people that pay the most but have bad practices, communication, management practices, might have the majority of disputes. So you can't say, well, because my benefits are better than someone else's, it's going to necessarily mean I'm going to have industrial peace, no disputes. It's how you treat people minute by minute, day by day, week by week, and month by month that ultimately, to my mind, creates harmony at the workplace.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned very important things. The first one that you mentioned earlier is communication. Everything is rectified by communication. Sometimes we miss things because we are not communicating. And what I like about one of the things that you have said as well is the fact that we must be consistent. And thank you so much, Mr. Goldberg. I think you are making a lot of sense. I'm learning a lot as well. Then the other question that someone asked was, in your role, how do you approach the task of facilitating resolution in a way that considers both the employer and the employee perspectives?
I think the one thing that we were taught some 30 years ago by international mediators and arbitrators in conciliation, especially in mediation facilitation, the cornerstone of mediation and conciliation is confidentiality. And we are lacking on confidentiality in the workplace, in the friendship, in all our social interactions. I ask your listeners and your viewers, how many people can you really rely on? That if you tell them something confidential, it will remain with them. It's exactly the same in facilitation and conciliation. You've got to enhance and respect and teach the fact that if you say something to me as one party, if I'm facilitating, it will remain by me and get express permission of the other party to disclose to the other party in respect of reaching a dispute. Again, parties work very, very good with mediators and conciliators and facilitators who really show and practice the issue of confidentiality. And again, going back to management and going back to management of relationships, if there's more confidentiality in the workplace, that you feel you could go to a manager, a Johnny, a Peter, a Paul, a Susan, a Tembi, a Tando, in respect of saying, I'm telling you something confidential, keep it there. It would enhance trustworthiness at the workplace incredibly. People have got very few friends at the workplace because people like telling stories. Tandi told me this, so I'm telling it to you confidentially. That's the first mistake. If Tandi told it to me confidentially, it should live and die with me, unless she wants to tell it, because effectively I should keep it confidential, because she came to me as a confidant to get my feeling and my honest view. That's the other thing. You need a straight answer. So in the workplace, you don't have people saying, well, Johnny, that's wrong. Clearly going down that path is wrong. Let's unpack the first question related to the second question. Even in a dispute with your employer, who wins at the end? Even if you win or lose, ultimately you've picked a fight with the employer.
Yes, true.
And ideally that is not good ultimately for your career. If you are really that good and the employer doesn't respect you, then you should leave. Because still in South Africa, we have a skill shortage of people with the right skill. And one of the right skills that is often undersold is the right attitude. Adaptability and the right attitude to the way you approach your daily routines at work.
All right. Thanks. You mentioning one interesting thing that one must not raise a dispute, and especially if they want to protect their careers. Would you recommend that someone does not say anything when they feel wronged or they feel aggrieved at work?
I was debating this with a colleague yesterday around, are we a better society 20 years later in democracy, call it 30 years later in democracy? Are we a better world than we were 20 or 30 years ago? And my mind is we are. Yes, there are international disputes that are bad, wars that are terrible, but generally as a world, I think we're better off. Because with social media, with people being exposed, with people not being able to get away with racist and sexist and bad treatment, I think we're a better off world. Because people are cautious. It still happens, but it happens very, very little compared to what happened when I was at school in Gabacha, effectively, or when my wife was at school, or our colleagues were at school. The abuse that was happening at schools was off the charts compared to what's happening now. And that's a good thing because people are exposed. So again, I'm not advocating you shouldn't raise a dispute. But again, if you raise it with HR, they should be confidential and direct in the right way. If it's wrong, you've been sexually harassed, you've been racist tones being uttered to you, or there's something really wrong, that should be addressed by an organization. That's good. If the organization's good, that will never get to dispute. It will be sorted out long before you get the CCMA to tell you that that's discriminatory, that's a bad practice. Johnny, keep your hands to yourself. Because again, many people have suffered lots of harassment, lots of racism, lots of sexism at the workplace. And I think that's got less and less. It should be eradicated. Harassment entirely. There's a code of harassment in South Africa now, a great guideline of how we should act as foremen, supervisors, managers, people in control, and workers, worker to worker, should also react in the same particular manner, and the standard should be high in that regard. So I think you must raise issues.
Okay.
I think they must be credible, and the good organizations will deal with them appropriately.
Okay. Thank you. You've answered the question. Somebody else who is curious. She wants to know if you can share, even if it's one case, where the repercussions of disputes were particularly significant, highlighting the importance of effective resolution.
I think we've had some large strikes in this country in various sectors. So, again, what always amazes me is that, and I won't give a specific example, I'll give you a local example, and you could apply this to many of the strikes in the last 5 years. But effectively, the employer says, my bottom line wage offer is 5%. Workers are at 8%. And then after a 3-week strike, which includes violence, they settle in 6.5%.
Okay.
To my mind, someone's not thinking there. Someone's being stupid. Or maybe two parties are being stupid. Because effectively, you've had 3 weeks of strike. You've caused a huge amount of damage to the relationship. Some people might have been injured in that strike, threatened or intimidated, which is also completely wrong. And then workers have lost 3 weeks of wages. The organization's lost 3 weeks of production or whatever they do in respect of whatever service they provide. So it's a lose-lose for everyone all around. Surely we're clever enough, 30, 40 years down, industrial relations of some of the best and worst practices in the world of industrial relations. But really, I think some of the best practices, because we've learned hard lessons, we've really had open, free industrial relations in this country. Surely they're enough for us who are clever enough to get involved in that dispute and say, listen, we're on a path to nowhere. Actually, 6 or 6.5 is the way to go. And what I advocate in respect of dispute resolution is a question you've asked, is maybe as parties, employers, employees and their trade union representatives need to say in those circumstances, let's go to private arbitration.
Okay.
And remember, private arbitration is evidentiary based.
Okay.
You're the trade union, you're demanding a bottom line of 8%. I'm the employer, I'm saying 5% is what I can afford. Then I must produce evidence of affordability of 5%. Okay. The trade union must produce evidence of CPI, food, petrol, cost of transport, medical, inflation, which could potentially be above currently the current ruling rate of 5.3% of CPI. That's what you give. Independent arbitrator adjudicates based on evidence, not my feeling, based on evidence of facts presented as to where the parties are. That's the correct route to go rather than strikes. I'd like to see a situation in South Africa, because we have got such tough times in respect of employment, such low youth employment, such difficulties in respect of international macroeconomic factors that affect us on the southern point of Africa. I'd love to see industrial relations where strikes are really the exception, not the rule. And we see that in many sectors, like the metal sector, like the motor sector. It's been many years of no strike. Why? Mature trade union, mature employer bargaining party, reaching a resolution. And again, the best negotiated settlement is everyone's not very happy. So the trade union's a little unhappy, the employer's a little unhappy. That's probably the best resolution to a dispute. But if you look at those big sectors, traditional trade unions involved, traditional employers, been long-standing, been around the block, both seen lots of strikes, settlements. For the last 10 years, no strikes in those settlements. And that, to my mind, is an accolade to brilliant, best-in-class industrial relations, even benchmarked against the world.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Goldberg. Another question, I hope I'm helping you out out there at home or at work. How do you guide your clients through the legal intricacies to ensure a fair and just resolution within the bounds of the law?
I think it's very, very important that when you do have complaints, grievances, you shift between what's true and what's not true.
Okay.
So again, we're in a very AI-driven world where technology is developing at a rapid pace. I truly believe lie detectors and voice detection technology will develop to such an extent I'll be able to tell quite quickly whether you're lying or not.
Okay.
And I'm saying bring that on,
Mm-hmm.
because we need to deal with the genuine stuff properly. So if you are being sexually harassed, as an example, as a woman, we need to take it extremely seriously
Yes.
and deal with it decisively. If you're not being sexually harassed and you just don't like me because I gave you a poor performance rating because of your performance, that also needs to be dealt with. So I think we're going to move towards technology very, very quickly in respect to voice detection. I see a world where you won't have a CCMA arbitrator. I think you'll see a machine, and you'll be giving evidence to a machine. I see that happening in the next 10 years. The implications for industrial relations and labour law is not necessarily all negative. It could be positive. Why? Because a human being is subjective, have got subjective elements, where if a machine properly coded would not have that same subjectivity. Yes, you might say you need emotions, etc., that's all very well. But again, the time to adjudicate a matter, the time for cross-examination, examination, and the whole process has got too lengthy in South African labour law. Great architecture in 1995, the Labour Relations Act, but now the application has become too slow, too timeless. And effective dispute resolution is great, as I said in the beginning, if it's done quickly and effectively.
Okay.
So again, the organisations that are great, they resolve the disputes. They don't. If you have got a complaint today, it's resolved in the next day or 2 or 3, done and dusted, and we all move on. Either it's a no, you haven't got a legitimate complaint, or you have one, and we delve into it and sort it out. That's good IR practice, that's good employment relationship, and that keeps employees on the happiness curve in most organisations.
I understand time is money. The quicker we resolve the dispute, the better for everybody, I guess. And another question that came from somebody, how can employees contribute to a harmonious work environment just to minimize the likelihood of disputes? Do you think there's something that the employee can do to minimize?
I think we've, to my mind, really failed on the education of all our employees.
Okay.
I think we need to educate our employees in respect of finances, international global politics, and I think we need to share information when it's good and it's bad in the company. So if you talk about SEP, PTY, LTDs, if I'm going to invest 20 million rand in South Africa in a business, let's call it a manufacturing business,
Okay.
I would expect a return that's above the international return because of the risk in South Africa. We've got political risk, we've got crime risk, we've got regulatory risk. So effectively, I would ask for a return on my money if I was putting 20 million rand into South Africa. We've got exchange control risk in respect of devaluation of the rand. So we've got a number of risks attributed to that. So employees at all different levels must understand that if the business is putting R500 million into a new plant, that they shareholder can at least expect a return of X. And you clearly communicate that. After that return, then there can be a talk about a gain share.
Okay.
You know, it's how do people earn businesses bonuses above that. And often that is attributable to employees.
Okay.
But often it's also attributable to other factors like exchange control, international markets, international takeoff demand. In other words, how much is the demand for X product? But again, if we agree on the benchmark, communicate the benchmark, then the bad information that flows that capitalism bad, employers bad, is filtered out because people come from the same level of understanding.
Okay.
We invested in this particular company here in the IDZ in Kucha, and effectively our investment return benchmark is there. When we achieve it and exceed it, then there are bonuses. When we don't exceed it or achieve it, then of course there's a negative connotation. You know, that you can't expect bonuses and additional things. We all got to tighten our belts to ensure we survive.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Goldberg. We would like to know from you, what role do alternative dispute resolution methods such as mediation and arbitration play in the context of employment-related disputes?
I don't believe enough.
Do they play any role?
Yeah, I think they do play a role, especially the CCMA, to my mind, is an organisation that's world class. Of course, it's a very broad organisation, so it's got capacity problems, it's got big budgetary constraints because treasuries cut their budget. But again, there's nothing stopping a firm doing their own alternative dispute resolution.
Okay.
And to my mind, there needs to be a lot more discussion on that between employers and employees. So we're not going to wait for the CCMA. We're going to form our own dispute resolution body through a private dispute resolution body to resolve our disputes quickly. Ideally, you want to train people internally to resolve disputes.
Okay.
So managers, supervisors, foremen, one of their basic training should be resolution of disputes, people management, consistency and fairness.
Okay.
So people don't like when I treat you differently to Tembi,
Oh, yes.
to Tando. They want to see everyone treated the same. And if you're my relation, it even gets worse, because the perception is because you're my relation, my wife, my cousin, I'm treating you differently. Actually, if you are my wife or cousin, I'm going to treat you tougher, because I want people to understand that the same treatment or even tougher, I've got a bigger expectation of you because you're in this company. There's nothing wrong with employment relations, but you've got to understand that people are going to perceive that those relations are getting a better and a fairer advantage than you. So again, it's consistency. I saw a complaint today where I was asked to give advice, where another employee is complaining that another female employee got 6 months paid maternity leave. She's complaining about that. Now again, if you've given one employee 6 months paid paternity leave, you should give it to someone else too.
True.
And of course, we've seen the recent case of Van Wyk, where even employers will have to give the same advantage to a male for paternity leave and a female, depending on what their policy is. So it's about communication, it's about fairness, and you can't give one person X and pay them Y, and another person you want to treat them differently. You're always going to have cause for industrial relations problems and grievances. Going back to one of your comments earlier on, time is money, but emotional distress and feeling that you are aggrieved grows like a cancer in the business. And that's why I keep on saying, the quicker you resolve disputes, the better you are as an organization. And that doesn't mean resolving means yes, yes, yes. It might say, no, that's wrong, that's not a terrible law, that's the line, and that's a consistent line. Employees at all levels, including senior employees, like to know what the rule is, and they like to see the rule fairly and consistently applied.
While I'm listening to you, I'm getting a very, very important point of dispute resolution training for employees, especially the supervisors and managers. Do you think that should be something that employers consider as part of the employment culture? Everybody in the organization goes through that process of training, of being trained. Do you think that will minimize some of these issues?
Absolutely, and I think it should start with induction.
Okay.
I think when you bring people in, there should be a basic standard of dispute resolution, and key to that is also this issue of confidentiality.
Okay.
Because supervisors, managers, foremen get a lot of information, and they shouldn't peddle in that information. Once that information comes to them confidentially, they should treat that as confidential. End of story. And if you train on that and dispute resolution, and at a proper process of dealing with disputes quickly and efficiently, I think you would solve 90% of the problems at the workplace.
Okay. The other question that came, how can employers and employees benefit from exploring the use of SSMA's labor court options, and what considerations do you think they should keep in mind when choosing these approaches of using the third party?
Going back to your previous point, one of your previous points, I think as an individual, you should treat that cautiously. I would, if I had the skill, and I was thinking of referring, say, an unfair discrimination dispute or equal treatment dispute against my employer, I'd raise the equal treatment dispute with my employer, but then what I would do, if they didn't address it, I'd leave. But of course, you've got to be bold to leave. You've got to have a job lined up. You've got to see the conditions of service around that job lined up before you leave.
Okay.
Because once you go into dispute mode, it's negative for you, it's negative for the company, it's negative, negative, negative. Even if you won your case, you're not sort of on the top promotional list of the particular company. You've spent a whole lot of time and energy on negative stuff. If you're that good, go find another job.
Oh, tough. For me, this is an interesting and close to my heart topic. The reason why I say that, there are many people that have called, some sent me messages wanting to know, do you think I should leave? Do you think I should just quietly go away and not say anything? Some people feel it's best that the employer knows how I feel, and some would, in most cases, want some form of compensation for being treated unfairly or something like that. But the question that I have for you, Mr. Goldberg, right now, which is something that comes to mind now, do you think it's really the best thing that an employee can just quietly leave and look for another job? What about those that would still want to go to that company? Would the employer know that we have issues if people are not saying anything?
Well, again, in society, anywhere, whether you're in Germany, France, anywhere in the world, you get good companies and bad companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm suggesting if you're working for a bad company,
Okay.
and they're not resolving their disputes,
Okay.
then potentially you should leave.
Okay.
If you want to raise your issue on the way out, then raise it. But I don't think you're ever going to get satisfaction, and I've been in this game for 35 years. I can't think of too many employees that have fought their companies that ultimately have won the battle. They might have won a little sideline battle, but ultimately they would have lost themselves. And the one thing I'm very clear of, these processes for individuals are hugely stressful. So from the mental health aspect, if you can get another job,
Okay.
if you can raise the issue and make sure the employer knows about it, 100% do it. If you think the employer is good enough to resolve it, and there are good employers that resolve it, sort it out, and then move on, perfectly raise it internally.
Okay.
But be very careful about going on a litigious path with a company that you still work for. It is hell on earth from a number of perspectives, especially to a company that is not mature enough to handle the fact that you can get a dispute and still have a working relationship. Very difficult to get motivated. If you've got a equal treatment case and you're working for the same company and you've got to go to work every single day and your case is looming, and sometimes if it ends up in the labor court, you could wait up to 24 months. I'm not so sure how good that's for your own personal development. Not so sure it's good for your motivation at the particular company. And yeah, I just think it's not good for everyone all around. So I think it's a catch up. Depends on who you work for. It's a catch-22. Some companies, no problem. Other companies, real big problem. I have an example last year, you asked for example, where the HR person supported a person in a grievance inquiry. Today, both those people are dismissed unfairly, but effectively my advice to both of them is yes, refer a matter, that's kind, but find another job as quick as you can. Don't rely on the fact that you might get some compensation, because they won't go back to that particular company. So let's assume they've both been unfairly dismissed. It's a despicable situation. But if the HR person had asked me my advice before supporting the person with the grievance, I would have told her to stay out of it because of the maturity of the company.
Okay.
So that's the critical call to make. So you're asking me practical advice, not theoretical advice that's out of a textbook.
Okay.
What is my real experience in 35 years? What helps employees who are suffering from this? To my mind, if you could find another job, find one. On the way out, tell them exactly what you got. But any good employer will have a proper exit interview to find out why you are leaving that organization.
Okay. I'm wondering, are we ever going to reach that level of maturity where the employer would not take anything personal?
I think the number of employers I could mention, and I won't mention the name, there are 20, 30, 40 employers that I know about who are at that level already.
Oh, great.
Not only international companies, but also local particular companies. But the bottom line issue, and I'd love to tell this to your viewers, you cannot solve your problems via the courts or the CCMA.
Okay.
It's a problem. It's a problem for you, it's a problem for the company, it's a problem for society in large. We have a problem if we are getting more and more referrals to the CCMA and less internal resolution.
Okay.
It's bad for the employee, it's bad for the company, it's bad for the other employees within that particular organization. It's just logical that must be it's like, how many divorces do you have? And the divorces are not good for anyone. Or how many disputes do you have within a family? You've got to go to a family court, or you've got to go to external family counselors to help that particular marriage. Those are not generally, you've got to quite an end state before you get there.
Yes.
To my mind, it would be the same with the CCMA. And unfortunately, trade unions and employers will say, sometimes the employer only listens through a process. No problem with that.
Okay.
I agree with it. Sometimes the employer would only listen to a legitimate protected strike. I have no problem with it. But again, in the relationship, it's a downfall of the relationship if you get to that level. I'm not saying who's the cause of it, but reflection back, there's a problem in that relationship if you're at the CCMA Labour Court, or you're on strike, or you're in lockout.
Wow. I hope people are learning out there. Thank you so much, Mr. Goldberg. The other question, I'm sure, because you are specializing in training, somebody wants to know, how do you approach the task of educating both employer and employees about their rights, responsibilities, and the potential consequences of disputes?
Well, again, I think it's a great question from one of your participants. Effectively, I don't think we do that. I don't think we teach people as they come in or while they're on the job what their rights and responsibilities are. So people just learn that along the way, and generally that's misguided. So there's no real proper objective training on those issues, and I think there should be. When I started out labour law 35 years ago, people used to go through a week induction. I don't see that anymore, that people go through a week induction. We sign you on and poof, you're on the bus tomorrow. Where's this week proper induction, or 2 weeks induction, or continuing induction? Because learning's changed. Learning's not necessarily going to a university anymore or online course. Learning is learning in action. And effective, it might require a short course here, a longer course there, but learning has evolved in respect of how we can learn. I read books on my phone, and they are shortened, summarized books. I hardly ever read a full book anymore, because I can get access to that information so much easier. I go on to ChatGPT when I want to know things, and I use Copilot and a whole range of things. So AI has changed the world, and employees need to understand that they need to get to the picture in respect of AI. Just on that point, a little deviation. Youth often ask me, but Johnny, we battle to get jobs. I'm saying, do you ever market your skill on your digital skill to employer? I said, do you ever market your digital skill? I said, but we haven't got any digital skill. I said, of course you have. You're on your phone all the time. You know exactly how to work all the stuff. You're digitally skilled. And they forgot to put that on their CV. Because the people they're applying to, who are maybe 30, 40, 50 or 60, haven't got the same digital skills in respect of apps, technology they have. It's first nature to them. So market your digital skills, because digital skills are a critical aspect to do the job today. How do you use Copilot? How do you use ChatGPT? How do you simulate, copy and paste that information? Again, the youth are skilled at that. Any data they can get, they're onto their phones, they are using technology all the time, and they market themselves properly in that particular space. They don't need to go to university for that. They're in the university of life every single time they're on their phones.
Okay. Are there specific educational initiatives or resources you recommend for fostering a better understanding of the labor laws and regulations for employers and employees?
There are many, many courses online. There are many courses even we run as Global that really change people's lives in respect of really teaching them the basics. And as you said, everyone should go through those courses. Everyone should know what their rights and wrongs are, so they're not misled. Because ultimately, even if I go to an advisor or a trade union, I should have sufficient knowledge to make up my own mind. That is the critical issue in respect of progression and learning. So you should have enough knowledge that you can make up your own mind in regard to whether you're being given the best advice or not the best advice. Take a simple example that I'd love more people to be educated on. The simple aspect of finance. So to me, part of my love is teaching people finance. Teaching people how to work with the money they get. And again, even if you are getting the minimum money, if you work with that money correctly, you'll be far richer than the person who earns triple what you earn, but spends their money, gets high interest rate debt, and effectively don't know how to manage their money. Money is a cumulative thing, and effectively the more you build, the more it grows, and the more that particular builds. But it requires maybe some short-term sacrifice. That I won't buy that thing now. I'll wait till I've got the cash to buy that thing rather than taking the expensive credit. How many people work out what they pay for a car on a credit program? How much they actually work out over 60 months? How much they actually pay for that car in rands and cents? So, well, maybe I'd buy the second-hand car and in 2 years' time have much more cash because I'm going to pay half the amount for that particular car. It's those kind of decisions that are fundamental in people's lives. And of course, one of the big problems we have today is we need to get people into their own homes and be able to afford those particular homes. And many of our youth today can't really afford their own homes. That's a real, we've got to solve for that, because that's a fundamental problem.
So what I'm hearing from you now is that we need to educate ourselves. Self-education is also important. Don't wait for somebody. We've got internet, we've got ChatGPT. Everybody has a responsibility to educate themselves and not wait for the employer. That's what I'm taking from what you are saying right now. How can a clear understanding of these rights and obligations contribute to a healthier employer-employee relationship?
Yeah, I think via education. I think people are empowered by education, they're empowered by knowledge. And I think we've got to be very careful. The youth is hungry, eh? So you give youth free access. Come on, Elon, with his free and cheap access to internet. You give people proper access to internet, and you watch how the youth will really learn and how hungry they are to use. So some of the programs I've been involved with, where we're giving rural kids access to Wi-Fi and data, and they are learning and self-learning themselves. And those people are a threat to the lazier 30s and 40s and 50-year-olds who are not doing that. And I'm encouraging that, because I think it's fantastic. We've got to be pushed from the bottom. There are many people out there that are hungry for a job, that are willing to learn. And again, this nonsense about the youth being problematic, I don't see that, and I don't share that sentiment. The youth that are already looking for jobs are really hungry for jobs. They've hit rock bottom. They really want to earn a living, to progress in their particular life. And you give those people half the opportunity, they're going to grab it. Our responsibility as employers is to educate them as they come in. These are the rules, these are regulations, so people understand what the rules and regulations are and what the guidelines are, to educate them enough that propels them into self-education in respect of rights, obligations, and perpetual learning, because learning is perpetual. I'm 60, I'm learning. I'm going on a university course now. I went to a university course last year. I learn every single day. I read to learn, and every single day I'm learning about technology. So I'm on my LinkedIn, I'm inviting people to my profile, and I'm greeting people, especially on their birthdays, every single day of my life. So again, although I'm in the 60 category, I'm still learning technology, but I'm forcing myself to utilize that technology on a day-to-day basis. I'm not asking one of my staff to do it. We've got a digital department. I do it myself, because it's self-help. And that's exactly what youth, middle managers, middle-aged people need to do, self-help. My wife said to me, Johnny, I really want to get more digitally empowered. I said, Linda, you're doing the digital banking already. So you're empowered on one of the most, probably the most important and serious thing, and that's digital banking. So effectively, the step to do digitalization on everything else is simple. You know how to do the banking. That's probably the most complex. You can digitally enable yourself very quickly. You've just got to use the technology. She likes Instagram. She's on Instagram a lot, so she's actually digitally enabled and could do everything. It's quite interesting when you ask someone, a techie, to come help you on your phone or your computer do something. They don't know the answer.
Yes.
They just got more patience of searching for the answer. So they'll try 3 or 4 things that don't work, and the 5th thing will work. Where I am too impatient to do that. So instead of trying myself and working it out, that self-actualization, which is the best form of learning, I rather call someone else in to help me. Self-actualization learning is the best way to go. Battle, trouble, fall, stand up. And when you stand up and learn that, then it's a learned application which you'll never forget. It's the same with rights, obligations, understanding what's out there. And I think there's so much available. There's so much technology available. There's so much information available. It's a fantastic era we live in.
Okay, thank you. I'm laughing because there are more questions people are asking. Like some look like it's something that you've answered already. In your view, Mr. Goldberg, what are the best practices for employers and employees to cultivate a positive working relationship, minimizing the likelihood of dispute?
Openness.
Okay.
Openness. And I keep on saying to employers, you should build the relationship. You don't get a bad relationship from out of nowhere. It grows over a particular period of time. And sometimes to rectify that when there's a bad relationship is really problematic. But I can't see, if both parties stick to the rules, how you can't have a good relationship and build a good relation. And that requires time, but it doesn't help to get in a room and do a relationship by objective building program, and the next day you're doing bad practices again. So it's about practice. I went to an example, I suppose you'd want an example. I went to a company, HR person picked me up at the airport, went to the company, and the marketing person greeted me, head of marketing, but didn't greet the HR person. And he said, "You see, Johnny, we've got a racial problem in this particular company." Now, whether the marketing person intended not to greet him or not, that's his feeling about not being greeted and me being greeted. You need to solve for that.
Yes.
You need to sort that out. If you haven't got enough awareness that you should greet everyone the same on a day-to-day basis, then best you go through a course or learn quickly or find another organization, because you're not right for this one. You've got to be tough in respect of what you expect, manage to do and act, because other people follow our lead.
Thank you. Are there specific policies or practices that you believe contribute to a more collaborative and respectful workplace?
I'm very worried about policies and practices. I was working on something this morning in respect of lengthy policies and practices. I think policies and practices should be short, especially the policies. Take an example of disciplinary inquiries and how we deal with discipline. It should be quick and effective.
Okay.
It shouldn't be lengthy. So some companies are taking months to deal with a simple disciplinary case. That's bad, because effectively everyone sees you take months and it doesn't resolve the dispute. So I think linking back to alternative dispute resolution, we can't solve it quickly internally. Let's get an alternative dispute resolution person, resolve it quickly and move on. Yes or no, move on. And that's exactly what you've got to do. And sometimes you've got to take a leap of good faith. In my 35 years of human resources, my 60 years on this planet, most people you interact with, most employees you interact with, most vast majority of employees, employers, shop stewards, trade unions are good faith. They want to have a relationship. They want to have peace. They want to grow. They want to prosper.
Okay, thank you. Another concern or question that came was somebody who is working in a situation of being bullied by his manager. He doesn't want to leave the company because he knows that this is the manager that has got issues. And what advice would you give to employers who receive complaints about managers that are bullying subordinates?
Deal with it. If you don't deal with it, you cause huge damage. And that's where you get bad relationships. So I'm a good technical manager, but I'm a bully. And effectively that's affecting relationships. That comes out in every employee survey we do. It comes out through the grievance that arise. Deal with it. Again, if he doesn't change his ways, if it's Johnny, then we've got to go on with the organization without Johnny.
Okay.
Because Johnny's not allowed to be a bully. You don't achieve anything by being a bully. And that's why I said, if you look at the world we live in, the business world we live in, the workplace environment we live in, over the last 20 years, 30 years, it's improved dramatically. Because the bullies used to get away with it without any recourse. Now the bullies are being singled out, and bullies are not good for cultivating good employment relations.
True. Now looking at the bigger picture, what strategies would you recommend that the employer and employees foster now for a long-term success in their working relationships, minimizing the need for legal intervention? We're now talking long-term because, yeah.
So I'm setting up a factory in Kucha. It starts with the people I employ understand the business case. And it starts and then continues that we have consistent communication about where we're at. When we're doing well relative to the return that the shareholders want. Because you don't make a return on that international factory there, it closes. We've seen many of those and we will see many more, unfortunately. International companies don't stay here because of the elephants or the lions or because of Madiba. They stay here to make a profit. If they can make a profit better in Brazil or better in Germany or better in America or better in Russia, they will then move to those particular dispensations. So it's open communication, not only when it's going badly. I keep on saying to employers, don't only communicate before retrenchments when you're in wage negotiations, communicate continually so people can buy in to the solution.
Okay.
People can understand where we are. So it's open, honest communication. Remember, it's two ways.
Yes.
We expect employees to be honest. We expect managers, shareholders to be honest as well. So that's the kind of dispensation. If you want long-term success, that's the ground and that's the soil you keep on fertilizing and watering, because that will grow the right plants. If you don't do that, I think you've got potential problems creeping all over the place.
Okay. I once had an issue. Obviously, I've been working in the HR space as HR manager for some time now. I once had issues in different companies where we kept on losing cases because managers acted irresponsible, and they were reckless in how they dismissed or disciplined the employees. Someone asked me, is there a way that when we lose cases at CCMA that we can make the managers pay from their own pockets for whatever compensation that we need to pay as an employer? Do you think that is a fair question, or is it something that can help influence our policies or the law, especially people who are acting irresponsibly or who do not care about people?
Well, I suppose my answer to that is simply those employers should be acting against those managers long before you lose the CCMA case.
Okay.
If they're truly reflective and they truly understand the issue and they're truly fair, then they'd act against those managers who are responsible. Simple as that. And either those managers would have to rectify their behavior, or if it's that serious, they'd be dismissed. If they don't rectify their behavior because it's not that serious, they'd be given them a warning and go through a path of dismissal if they didn't rectify their behavior. I don't think it's feasible to make them pay. I think you would have sorted it out long before you lost the arbitration.
Okay.
Which HR executive, which IR executive, which external advisor cannot pick up that this case has got a serious risk of losing? It's a problem in the system that you'd fight cases that are quite obviously losable, that you will lose. And that's a fundamental problem for me. Consistency is an issue in the law. In the Code of Good Practice, it says you should apply the rules and regulations consistently to everyone. If it is inconsistent, you've got evidence of Tembi and Johnny being treated differently, and they're like by like, you'll lose that case. And you'll get a reinstatement of Johnny, because effectively that's the law and the codification of the law confirmed by the Labour Court, Labour Appeal Court and Constitutional Court.
I asked this question because last week, I'm sure it's something that you are aware of. There is a case in one of the government departments that relates to theft. I think this person was dismissed in 2016, and then she fought from CCMA and she won the case, but the employer refused to reinstate. Then the employer decided to take it up for review with Labour Court. It took many years, but eventually the lady won the case. But between the Labour Court and the CCMA process, when CCMA ruled that the employee must come back, the employer refused, and it was about 5 years the employee waiting to go back to employment. So it's interesting that there was just one person that the employer was not willing to deal with, who did not want this person that they were accusing of theft. So that's why I thought, I wonder, is there a way maybe the employer at some point can, maybe punishing is not the right word, punish the people that seek to punish others at work, because everybody wants to bring something on the table for their families. That's why I thought maybe the employer may be strict and make sure that people are not acting recklessly when it comes to people.
Well, again, I go back to your previous example. To my mind, if you have managers that have dismissed people unfairly with no evidence, they should be taken to book. They shouldn't be working in those departments anymore. And again, if you look at the cases going through the Labour Court, Labour Appeal Court, there are a number of government cases, and those government cases should not be there, because we're in fiscal hardship times, and effectively we cannot afford to spend money on litigation on those issues. They should be sorted out at the ground level in respect of good management practices, discipline, fair consistent.
Okay.
Remember, it takes two to tango.
Yes.
The
yes,
fundamental principle of employment is trust. Trust works both ways. But you cannot have a camera measuring and monitoring people in respect of theft. I'm dealing with a case now where a person took out some bolts, but he did take out the bolts, and and it's a problem because he was close to retirement. But we have treated workers similarly, and he's been dismissed, and correctly so, because he took out some bolts against the rule that is theft. Regardless of the fact it was 20 bolts, or whatever the case would be, that is theft like anything else. He knew the rule, he's clearly contravened the rule. You've got to be consistent in your application of the rule.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Thank you so much for your insight. But just to wrap up in terms of what I've concluded for myself is that if you feel you are aggrieved, there is a way of resolving that internally instead of going through the third-party dispute resolution process. But if you feel you are not happy and things are not being resolved, you have an option of going and just leaving the employer, or you can still exercise your legal right and go through CCMA or labor court. One other thing that is important for me now, which is one of the reasons why we are having these talks, is there is a possibility that the employer and employee can have healthy relationships. But it depends on how mature both parties are and how willing they are to resolve the issues that they have. So it is possible that we can have healthy workplaces. It is possible that people can be treated fairly. It is possible that people are able to raise their issues and not treated badly after they have raised their grievances. I would be happy if you were to write any comments, ask any questions that you may have, maybe for Mr. Goldberg, maybe for myself. We will always keep our communication channels open. You can go through all our platforms that are on the screen. You will see where you can find us, whether on LinkedIn, on Instagram. We are available for you. Open up and talk, because we are here to help everybody. It was nice having you today. Mr. Goldberg, once again, thank you for your time. It's time for us to say goodbye, and thank you for joining us, HR Office podcast with Tigizwa Vezile. I appreciate your time. I hope you are learning. See you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.